Lindiwe Sisulu, the last time she was in New York was when she spearheaded South Africa's election onto the UN Security Council. She returns now days ahead of President Cyril Ramaphosa's arrival here on Sunday. His first visit to the UN General Assembly high-level segment as president, her first as chief diplomat. She is my guest, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu. My pleasure and a warm welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure too.
This is the first General Assembly for South Africa since the departure of President Jacob Zuma.
It is true.
Maita and Kawana Mashabane was here the last time we did this.
Yes.
Besides the new faces, what does Team South Africa bring to this event that we haven't seen before?
Well, you know, we come at a time which has been a wind behind our sails, which is the launching of the Mandela Day and Mandela Peace Summit. And we have found unprecedented support for South Africa through Mandela. And we intend to utilize the space to talk to the world about our achievements as a country, about Mandela himself, what he means to the world. And we are humbled by the respect that the world has shown our leader. And we come here with a great deal of humility, but at the same time very willing to step up onto the stage and show what South Africa is capable of.
It is, of course, called the Nelson Mandela Peace Summit, but let's also acknowledge the centenary of your late mother, Albertina Sisulu.
Well, we're in New York now. And what we're celebrating in New York is Madiba's centenary. And what we're bringing, apart from the fact that we would like to bring a new face, a breath of fresh air, and a new optimism about our country, we would like to give the United Nations a statue of Madiba. And they have agreed. Fortuitously, they've given us a space to provide a full statue, whereas in the past, anybody who is recognized by the United Nations would have been given a space of a bust. So we feel extremely privileged as South Africans. And we feel particularly honored that Madiba is remembered by the world in this way. It's a spectacular respect. We didn't expect this, but we've been working on it for quite a long time. And we'd like to thank the Secretary General and everybody else who's been involved in this, because it is going to put South Africa first. For the first time at the UN, it will be South Africa Day.
I was reading the political declaration, Madam Minister, that will be adopted at this Peace Summit on Monday. It calls for a redoubling of efforts to build a peaceful world that reflect the values of Madiba. It highlights the need for preventative diplomacy, the importance of dialogue. But nowhere in this document does it mention the word Security Council or the word reform is mentioned. Nowhere in the document at all. Is this a template for the Nelson Mandela Decade of Peace? Why then no mention of the reforms that are needed in essentially the most powerful body and organ of the UN?
Because we had drafted the declaration in such a way that it would be accepted by all, and we had unanimous support. We didn't want to bring in anything in there that would cause a distraction from the real issue. What we wanted to celebrate are the values of Nelson Mandela. This is the man who drove South Africa into the democracy that we enjoy today. It is a symbol of the world of what is possible against all odds. And the fact that it is a peace summit should direct us to what it is, the values that he lived for, what it is that he would have wanted to say to us had he been alive. To say that, you know, even when things are very bad and things are not going the way you would have wanted to, there is an easy way. And the easy way is to take the humble route and accept that there is a way in which you can negotiate, and it is a way that you can create peace. This is what he's always striven for, peace in the world, and that's what he has directed his entire presidency, to create peace in the world. If we could overcome our hardship, we don't see why it is not possible to try and give that lesson to other people to take with them.
President Ramaphosa told members of the diplomatic corps last week in Pretoria that South Africa will be coming this week strongly to advocate for the comprehensive reform of the Security Council, 2 permanent seats for Africa, 5 non-permanent seats in terms of the Ezulwini consensus. Minister, respectfully, this has been a standard line of the South African government for the 24 years.
It has.
And you don't really have much to show for the advocacy that has happened for at least a quarter of a century.
I would like us to stick to Mandela, because if we start there and the impact that it is creating, it makes it so much easier for us to go back to that which we stand for. Because as you say, we've been knocking on this door for quite a while, and there is a way in which we can do it. And we can find a way in which we can introduce these very important measures in such a way that they're acceptable to all. If we have not succeeded in the past, there must be something we were not doing right. But at the bottom of it, this is what we would like to achieve. And we can do it without causing any bloodshed, without causing any harm to anybody. And Madiba has shown us the way. We can negotiate our way to get exactly to where we would like to get to.
We hear in these corridors as well that multilateralism is under threat. President Ramaphosa talked about unilateralism on the rise in global affairs and the violation of national sovereignty. Who's he referring to in particular?
I think that he didn't make any reference to anybody deliberately, because it is something that we are all very conscious of. There is a rise of unilateralism, and we in SADC have been particularly concerned about ensuring that we take a position where we are going to support any structure that would help us get into getting back to what the United Nations stands for, which is multilateralism. There is no denying that we are seeing a rise of unilateralism. We are seeing a rise of what we would call right-wing governments in Western Europe. We're seeing pushback against migration, definite resistance to people seeking refuge in other countries, very inhuman kind of situation, but that seems to be a rampant course of action that most countries are taking. And it is an unfortunate situation happening in our time, and we are determined that we are going to play our role in making sure that there is some tolerance in the world, tolerance for other people, tolerance for people in distress, especially when that distress is caused by countries that are broken down by wars. The whole idea of the United Nations is a forum for multilateral negotiation and discussion, and we would like to bring everybody together to that fold so that whatever action we take resonates with what we represent. And we want to drive that point home, particularly now that it's Madiba's 100th year. Sure. He's a symbol of everything that is possible when you work together, when you live beyond yourself and think of other people, when you live beyond your own circumstances and think of what effect your own actions are having on other people.
But let me push you on that one, on the unilateral point. I mean, you as chief diplomat, being very diplomatic, you won't use specific examples, but I'm the chief journalist, so I can do that. So I'm going to give you a few. Yeah. The United States, many say, is the main protagonist in this regard, be it the movement of the Jerusalem embassy from Tel Aviv, the Iran nuclear deal withdrawal, climate change that upset the environment minister from South Africa dearly, the withdrawal from the migration compact, imposition of unilateral tariffs, unilateral sanctions. How would you characterize the current relationship between your government and that of the administration of Donald Trump?
Well, at the moment it seems to be an unfortunate relationship. We haven't had the time to build a relationship yet. We are fairly new, the Trump administration is fairly new, but I'm confident that after meeting with my counterpart, we will be able to sort most of these things out.
There's a planned meeting for
There is
New
a planned
York,
meeting for New York on the sidelines of New York, and we have been in telephonic conversation and also written to each other a number of times. So I'm comfortable with the way that we relate to the United States from my perspective. That does not remove the strident actions that the United States has taken in relation to moving the embassy to Jerusalem. We objected to that. There was no consultation, and we have been involved in the Palestinian peace matter for a very long time. And we would have expected that there would be some discussion around this matter to get consensus around something so sensitive. We were concerned about the breaking down of the joint GCPS around GCPOA around Iran, and we expressed our objection to that. And we're hoping that we're going to use the space that we have now to say that there is another way of doing it. There is a way. Bully tactics is not going to work. That is what brought the world into the Second World War.
Is there any accountability for Washington in these conversations?
We haven't had any engagement with them, so we would not expect that there would be any accountability. But we're here now, we're at the United Nations now, where everybody is accountable for what they do.
Sure.
And we will be a non-permanent member in the Security Council, and that's where we expect all members to account for what they're doing, especially if what they're doing is not helping the cause of peace, if what they're doing is actually exacerbating the situation of uncertainty and war.
Let me read you something. Greg Mills of the Brenthurst Foundation and an American political scientist, Jeffrey Herbst, wrote recently in the Daily Maverick, quote, "Unfortunately, much of foreign policy toward America is not founded on a clear-eyed vision of our interests, but is distorted by misplaced revolutionary ardor. virtue signaling to particular constituencies and personal pique. In other words, we are sometimes quite Trumpian. Do they have a point?
No, it's prejudging the matter. What they are basing themselves on is when we disagree with the United States, and we make it quite clear when we disagree. They haven't quoted us when we have agreed with the United States. When, in fact, the issue of land, and President Trump had tweeted on the issue of land, we took a decision to call in the American embassy to have a discussion with them. We were not playing to any revolutionary ardor. We wanted to make sure that they understood. And by that evening, we were quite certain they had understood. They corrected the statement, and we indicated that we found it unfortunate that the president had not immediately contacted my counterpart, where he might have had a different perspective. We're quite happy that we've been able to put that behind us. We are putting our interests in the forefront of our international relations, which is why on the back of this we're also ensuring that we can deal with the issue of the reduction of poverty in our country by creating a relationship with investment communities in the United States, in the hope that we can lure them to South Africa to invest in South Africa.
I want to talk a bit about Wednesday next week when the President will spend a day with business, but let's just finish off here at the UN before we do that. You are moving into the council next year.
We are moving.
Nikki Haley just said, the US ambassador, that President Trump will be hosting a dinner on Tuesday for all current members and future members of the Security Council. So I'm not sure if you've got your invitation yet, but I think it's in the post.
Okay.
But you are entering a council, Madam Minister, where you have Russia pitted against the Western countries. You have China that plays a fairly low-key role despite being a permanent 5 member. And you have an elected 10 that, if they stick together, could be a very powerful bloc, but often don't. What do you make of those dynamics as you emerge in the Security Council?
Well, what will determine what we do is what is in our national interest, first and foremost. Secondly, we are committed to ensuring that it is Africa first. Whatever it is that will benefit Africa, we will be there to support that.
Africa struggles to agree on certain things.
I don't know that. We've just emerged from the AU, and we had amazing unanimity on a number of things.
I can mention a few examples.
Okay.
The ICC, I can mention the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Okay, fine. Mention those. I don't think that we disagree on the Palestinian issue. It is the modality of how we enter that fray and ensure that there is a way in which we can uphold that which the Organization of African Unity was built upon. So there's no disagreement there. The ICC, there is no disagreement whatsoever. I think that every country has the right to opt in and out of the ICC. We are discussing our own situation and reviewing our own position, because we have opted out of the ICC perhaps in a peak of anger. And we felt that we are actually better off in the ICC to transform it from inside, rather than standing outside and hurling a whole lot of expletives from outside. So we are in the process of reviewing our position, and we will inform you when we have arrived at a position.
I thought you were about to change the position right here on SABC, madam.
I am not about to do. This would fall very much into the category that Daily Maverick is talking about, where they imagine that foreign policy is made on, at whatever.
I was going to grab my scoop when I saw it. It flashed before my eyes for a second.
I know. I am going to be a terrible disappointment. No, we would like to make sure that we can carry as many people as possible in whatever we do.
Sure.
It does not help our cause if we are alone in a situation where we actually can carry so many other people. And we would like to use the symbol of Madiba, who made sure that at all times he carried everybody, including his enemy.
Sure.
So those who may disagree with us, we want to use the opportunity to persuade them that our way of doing things, our way of seeing things, might be the better way. Not because we think that we're better, but because we've been through the worst and we have survived it. We have learned, and we've come out with a man who towers above everybody else that we've known in this century.
Well, I promised you we'll talk about the business element of the trip. The President, of course, has set aside Wednesday for engagement. He'll be at the Bloomberg Global Forum. He'll meet with CEOs, captains of industry, George Soros, I'm told, the billionaire philanthropist. Investors, Madam Minister, are seeking certainty, right?
Yeah.
You know that. They're seeking policy consistency. They have concerns about property rights, land expropriation without compensation. How do you provide the level of certainty that they are seeking as we are moving towards so much uncertainty in terms of elections, in terms of how this policy is going to play out? It's a very uncertain time for South Africa, and yet you're trying to sell certainty. How do you thread that needle?
Well, what the president is doing most times when he takes a public platform is to talk about land, to explain to the world why we've taken the routes that we're taking, to explain to the world that this was part of the negotiated settlement that got us to where we are, that this is part of our constitution, that we've tried all means to resolve this matter, and we have not succeeded 24 years down the line. Our people are very impatient with us, they're very angry, and we've got to do something. It is their right, it is in the Constitution. They have a constitutional right to the redistribution of land. So we're dealing with it in the best way possible. We have put it on the table of Parliament. There couldn't be a better place. We are going around the country to educate our farmers, to educate everybody about what we're doing and get consensus around the matter. So this gung-ho attitude that is associated with us in land is totally untrue. And we have asked our ambassadors internationally to make sure that they can, play their part in educating the world about our situation on land and why we've taken the route that we're taking. It is
what you're calling economic diplomacy, right?
Economic diplomacy.
It's time for all the diplomats to step up in
It is
that
time for
sphere.
all the diplomats to understand what it is that we are wanting to assure our investors about and create certainty. And the biggest issue that has created uncertainty has been the land issue. We need to start with that, educate them about what it is that we're doing. There is absolutely nothing outside of the Constitution which we're dealing with in the land matter. And we're doing it in the best way possible, in the most responsible way.
So if I'm a business, US business person that you'll engage with, I have $100 million on, sitting in my bank account. How do you make the case? How do you finish the sentence? Come and invest in South Africa because?
Because it is the best place to invest in. We have had democracy over the last 24 years. We have a thriving economy. Of course, we've had our glitches when everybody else has had their glitches. But I couldn't have thought of a better place.
Strong financial sector, banking sector?
Financial sector, banking sector. I can't think of a better place where they would get their returns. George Soros, that you refer to, is one of our biggest investors in the area of housing. And he has stayed very constant in investing in South Africa because he has believed in what he is doing there. And if he has the opportunity to explain to you, he'll tell you that that is the best investment he has